Thank you so much for listening to that. We now have our next video. We're moving right along. This is absolutely the person that Ben needs to be introducing.
That's right. So our next speaker is Gary Frey. Gary's a connector, MacGyver, and a confidant for CEOs, as well as my co-host on the Anything But Typical podcast, where we feature vulnerable, behind-the-scenes stories of ripple-making entrepreneurs to encourage others. Gary's served as president of 4 successful companies, including BizJournals.com, which he helped transform from a 3-person organization to a $100 million company. When he's not running businesses or helping CEOs create things, he does Murph every Monday. Make sure you Google that. He's a triathlete, drummer, father of 2 grown sons, and he's a grandfather to 4 grandkids and married the wife of his dreams. So everybody, buckle in, take a listen to Gary Frey.
Hey, I'm Gary Frey. 27 years ago, I was standing on the sideline of the Harris Y soccer fields, watching my 5-year-old play swarm ball, AKA soccer. And if you've ever watched 5-year-olds play soccer, you know it should be called swarm ball and not soccer, because it's a ball being swarmed by a bunch of kids moving up and down the field. Next to me is another soccer dad watching intently, and then he taps me on the shoulder and says, "So what do you do for a living?" At that moment, fear hit my heart. Pretty innocent question, don't you think? But what was happening in my mind was, uh-oh, I don't want to tell him because I'm embarrassed. And there was a lot more to just the embarrassment. But one of the things was I was unemployed. Have you ever been in a situation where somebody asks you a question, innocent enough, and you don't want to necessarily answer it because it embarrasses you, and there's other head trash behind that embarrassment? Well, I went ahead and told him because I felt so low at that moment, because we had been in town for only 9 months in Charlotte. I was unemployed for the last 3 months, and I didn't know anybody that was unemployed. I felt very embarrassed to be unemployed, and I felt like a loser in many ways. But I went ahead and told him I'm unemployed. And interestingly enough, he says, "Really? What's your background?" I said, "Well, I just recently turned around an ad agency. We turned it in 6 to 9 months. And it had my name on the door." He's like, "Interesting. Well, First Union is just re-engineering their marketing department, and he was a consultant there. And he said, they need somebody like you. Get me your resume." So I didn't know this guy from Adam, but I had nothing to lose because we were on fumes. My wife was home with our 2 little boys, and I was the sole breadwinner. I wasn't bringing in much bread. So to my surprise, he not only followed through, but I got a full-time job in 2 or 3 weeks later with a signing bonus of $10,000. It was like manna from heaven. But there was a lot more to that than meets the eye that actually applies to you. And if it doesn't apply to you, I guarantee you somebody you know it applies, but more than likely it applies to you. And the issue here is imposter syndrome. So you've probably heard it, and if you haven't, Google it. But it was coined by 2 female psychologists who, in the 1970s, who observed this phenomenon, especially with female high-achieving executives. Well, we've seen since then that it affects pretty much everybody. I'm certainly not a female, and it certainly has wreaked havoc on my life. So what is this thing, imposter syndrome? Typically, it's this overwhelming sense of inferiority, feeling not good enough, being afraid of being found out to be something other than the image you're portraying. All you got to do is look on Instagram and you see everybody's show reels. The imposter syndrome just keeps playing back your behind the scene reels and says, yeah, but if they only knew. And that's what was happening to me on that day. One of the best visual descriptions I've seen of this phenomenon is two circles. One circle is about this big. And in that circle, it says, what I know. In a much larger circle that encompasses that small circle, this bigger circle says, what I think everyone else knows. The reality is, we all know about this much. It's just about that much. So if you can relate to that at all, hang with me. And if you can't, trust me, you know somebody that can. Let's go back to that, a little bit of that head trash of why would I feel so angst? Why would my heart race and be afraid to tell this guy I'm unemployed? You know, part of it is pride, I guess. The other thing was he did not know that I'd only been in town 9 months. He didn't know that 3 of those 9 months I was unemployed. He didn't know that I had experienced partner embezzlement on my first turnaround. That's what brought me to Charlotte, North Carolina. So I didn't tell him that part. I just said I was unemployed. I was not willing at that moment to say, hey, I've been through this. The other thing that he didn't know is I had been in Charlotte for 6 months before, and to take an equity position in another ad agency. I brought a $2 million account to the guy that I joined in exchange for equity in the company. And after 6 months, I delivered what I said I would do with that account and one of my top people. And my partner said, today's your last day. I got what I need. Well, he knew that I had forgiven hundreds of thousands of dollars of my other partner's debt. And he figured I'm not going to go after him for $30,000. I felt like a loser twice over at least. Oh, and plus I didn't tell him this either. I'm a college dropout. A little bit tougher in 1994, 1995 to find a job as a college dropout. He didn't know any of those things. So my question to you is, do you have things that you just can't tell everything about because you're just too afraid or too embarrassed? I've found this to be true in almost every CEO I've coached since 1998, as well as those CEOs that have been willing to confide in me and tell me some of the things that bother them. So I've got good news for you. If you have ever suffered from any of this, I've got 5.5 easy steps, 5.5 that have helped me deal with it and really put it in the rearview mirror to a certain degree. It doesn't bother me nearly like it did. And when I follow these 5.5 steps, I'm free. And I've seen it work with others as well. So the first thing is to realize you are not alone. So many people deal with this. And don't just take my word for it. Just Google it. Google it and you'll find out. It affects pretty much everybody. But to understand that you are not alone in this thing makes a huge difference. The second thing is I created this thing called Thrive Wither. It's a simple T chart. Basically take a portrait piece of paper, split it vertically with a line, draw a line at the top horizontally, write Thrive on the left side, write Wither on the right side. On the Thrive side, I want you to write down all the stuff that comes alive in you, the stuff that you love to do. This is not a strengths and weaknesses thing. This is a Thrive and Wither. And here's why. If you focus on the stuff that makes you come alive, where you thrive, you're going to have more opportunity to silence that imposter syndrome that's chirping in your ear. Yes, but, yes, but, yes, but, I'm not good enough on this or that. Focus on the stuff that makes you come alive. Give yourself 30 minutes, uninterrupted time, stream of consciousness. Do you like variety? Do you like the same thing over and over? Do you like being around a bunch of people? Do you like being by yourself? Do you need a mix of those things? Do you like being outside? Do you like working in a pristine environment? Do you like walking the plant floor? The kinds of tasks that you like to do. Are you more a team person? Are you more of a non-team person? Are you more of a leader? Are you more of a follower? Be honest with yourself on all of those things. Then move to the wither column. You're going to be listing stuff even that you may be good at, that people identify and say, man, you are the best at pivot tables in the company, but you hate pivot tables. Put those things that make you wither, that drain your battery on that side. Once you've done that for yourself, it takes courage to be honest, not to put in the stuff that you think somebody needs you to be or wants you to be. That's conformity. That's bondage. But do the stuff that's true to you. And if you're leading a company, once you've done this, do it with your management team. Take it through your entire company. The third thing is shine a light on it. That really takes courage. To admit it because you're afraid of rejection. That's usually the case. I was terrified of rejection. One of the best examples I have found is a woman named Tana Green. She wrote this book called Creating a World of Difference. You may know her because she is one of the most successful female executives in this area. She has had 10,000 W-2 employees work for her. And yet, she had secrets that were holding her back. She was afraid to admit, I can't do that. I can't talk about the fact that I had a child out of wedlock at age 15. She got married to the guy. He beat her up and abandoned her. It's in this book. And her story really is amazing. She had 2 years of college. That's about it. But she's an amazing human being, but she put a spotlight on it like nobody's business. And she said she became so free. The more that she talked about it, the more free she became. And guess what? When you do that, you unlock other people. I had an experience 5 years ago where I talked about that soccer dad experience because I wanted to honor Jim Manley, who was that other soccer dad. Now, listen, when I wrote this 1,300 character post about that experience, I was terrified again, 22 years later, about talking about it. Why? More rejection. It just conjured up all those thoughts again. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to hit the post button because I hope it helps somebody else. And most importantly, even if nobody reads it, I want to honor Jim Manley. 8.3 million people read it. It resonated. That does say that we're not alone. 8.3 million. It took me 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, 4 weeks to just answer the emails and also the comments. And I say that only to say this. It takes some courage to do it, but you will be free and you will free other people. That leads into the fourth thing. Focus on serving others versus how they're perceiving you. When we are focused on how someone perceives us, we get in bondage. Comparison kills gratitude. And whenever we're comparing ourselves or worried about how somebody is perceiving us, we allow ourselves to get into bondage. The fifth thing, gratitude journal. Intentional gratitude is probably one of the most powerful things I've ever experienced. And I learned it probably in the lowest moment of my life in 2009 when our private equity firm blew up. 30 million bucks worth of us got wasted. I got filleted financially, and I was as low as I've ever been in my life. Yet, I learned the power of an intentional gratitude. And so I encourage you, get a gratitude journal, make it special. Get yourself a special pen and write 3 entries every day. I'm grateful for ... And then a thought about that gratitude. And it's not being grateful for the terrible circumstances. It's being grateful in spite of those things. The 5.5, the number 5.5, this is the last of these tips. Embrace the anything but typical in you. We are all anything but typical, and our fingerprints prove it. We were designed uniquely. Embrace what you are good at, who you are uniquely, etc., and embrace that anything but typicalness in other people. I hope this has benefited you. I hope you found some hope in case you have suffered under that in silence. Be the anything but typical person that you were meant to be. That's why we launched this podcast called the Anything But Typical Podcast, featuring the stories of entrepreneurs who are willing to tell their behind the scenes reel, their struggles, not just their podium finishes. I look for humility, and that has been a beautiful thing because we want to encourage other people. You are anything but typical, and embrace it. Thank you so much for your time today. Have a good day.
And you just listened to Gary Frey. You know, Ben, what a treat for you to be able to work with him.
There we go, Chris. Yeah, no, it's amazing. So I had Gary on my podcast. I just reached out to him cold on LinkedIn. We'd never known each other. And that sprouted a relationship to where we're now business partners, have been doing a podcast for 2.5 years. It's quite amazing. He's a phenomenal individual.
Yeah. So just like everything Bill and I put on with this small business, there's always challenges. There's a big storm in Charlotte, and he can't be live on Zoom. So what we're going to do is get him live on Local Biz Now as soon as we can to talk with him, and we're going to give him a full show with that, and certainly you're going to come on as well with that.